Hi, I'm Jules. I'm an intern at the Palmer Museum of Art, and I'm an artist and art education major at Penn State. Today, I'm going to show you how to do a fun art project at home, creating a weaving. This lesson is inspired by the raffia textiles on display in the African Brilliance exhibit at the Palmer. You can most likely find all of the materials and supplies that you need for this project around your house. Some supplies that you'll need for this project include a piece of cardboard. I cut this out of a pizza box, but you could also just use a cardboard box. Any type of string or yarn that you have, you can use ribbon, regular yarn, twine. You could also get creative and make yarn, so I'm going to be using some plastic bags that I cut up. You're also going to need a ruler, but if you don't have a ruler, a piece of lined ruled paper will work just as well. A marker, scissors, toothpicks, and tape. The next thing you'll want to do is turn your piece of cardboard into a loom. You can do this by cutting slits on each side of the cardboard. What I did was use a piece of notebook paper and marked a dot at every other line on both sides. Then I cut a small slit about 1/2 inch at each dot so that my loom would look like this. This way, each slit on either other side matches up with the other one. The next step is to prepare the loom with what's called a warp thread. I'm going to use twine as my warp thread because you want something that's a little bit more sturdy. What you're going to do is take the end of the piece of the warp thread and tape it on to the middle of the back of your loom, like this. You're going to want to put it on one side. Next, what you're going to do is just wrap the twine around the loom, putting it in each slot. And eventually, you'll have done this around the entire loom so the front and back will look like this all the way across. Once your loom is prepared, it's time to start weaving. I'm going to start my weaving with a piece of yarn. The first step is to tape the end of your piece of yarn to the end of a toothpick. You don't want your yarn too long because you can always add more. To get started weaving, you're going to take the toothpick, which is acting like the needle, and go under the first piece of warp thread. You're going to go over the next, under, over until you get all the way across. When you get all the way across, pull your piece of yarn all the way to the end and tie the end onto the first piece of warp thread. After using all of my yarn, this is what my weaving has started to look like. To continue, you can tie another piece of the same string onto this and repeat the process, or you can change your media. I'm going to tie a strip of plastic bag that I cut onto my yarn and continue weaving like this. You're just going to want to tape the needle to the other end and continue as you were. Repeat this process, changing material as often as you want until your entire loom is filled up. This is what my weaving looks like when I'm all finished. I chose to switch between different types of string. I used yarn, plastic bags, ribbon, and plastic bag skin. The next step is to flip it over and cut all of the back warp threads in a straight line. After you cut the warp threads on the back, pull them off of one side of the loom. What you're going to do next is tie them in knots together at the end so your weaving doesn't fall off. After you finish one side, you can pull them off of the other side and do the same thing. After this, you'll have a finished weaving. I decided to cut my strings short. You could braid them, you could bead them, you could leave them long, you can do whatever you want. Thanks for watching. Make sure you save your loom so you can do this project again in the future.